When the last light dimmed inside the old community hall, Ethan Reynolds sat alone in the back row. The reunion was over. Laughter had faded, the air smelled faintly of coffee and nostalgia, and the chairs stood empty in uneven rows. He waited until everyone left. Not because he didn't belong there, but because he wasn't sure where he belonged anymore. The past 5 years had been a blur of running away, from people, from places, and mostly from himself. He traced the rim of the paper cup in his hands, still half full of cold coffee. Across the room, the janitor stacked folding chairs, humming softly. Ethan didn't move. He couldn't. The walls still carried echoes of the last conversation he'd had with his mother before she passed. Words he wished he could take back. She had asked him to stay. He had walked away. Now, 5 years later, the ghosts of that choice followed him everywhere. The janitor gave a small nod as he left, locking the back door behind him. Ethan looked around the silent room. The smell of old wood, the faint creak of the floorboards, and felt something inside him stir. He had come tonight hoping to feel connected again. Instead, he felt the same hollow ache that had followed him since the day he buried his mother. Then behind him, a familiar voice spoke. "I thought that was you." He turned. Standing by the door was Mrs. Dalton, his high school English teacher. Her gray hair was pinned neatly, her eyes still kind, her smile as patient as it had always been. "Mrs. Dalton," he murmured. "It's been a long time." "It has," she said, walking toward him. "You were always the last one to leave after class. Looks like that hasn't changed." He chuckled softly. "Guess not." She sat beside him, the sound of her coat brushing the chair. "How are you, Ethan?" He hesitated. "I'm surviving, I guess." Mrs. Dalton studied his face for a moment, then said, "Your sister was here earlier." Ethan froze. "Lily?" She nodded. "She asked if you'd come. I think she was hoping you would." He looked down at his hands. The thought of Lily still made his chest tighten. He hadn't spoken to her since their mother's funeral. They had fought that day, over blame, over pain, over things that didn't matter anymore. "I don't think she wants to see me," Ethan said quietly. Mrs. Dalton's eyes softened. "That's not what I saw in her face tonight. Sometimes forgiveness doesn't need words, just courage." Ethan felt the weight of her words linger. When she finally stood to leave, she placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Go home, Ethan. Some things won't wait forever." And then she left, her footsteps fading into silence. For a long time, Ethan sat there alone again. Then slowly he stood. On the table near the door was a framed photo from the reunion. His mother's smile stared back at him, warm and patient. The same smile that had once made everything in his world feel safe. He touched the photo gently and whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom." Then, before fear could stop him, he took out his phone. He scrolled through his contacts until he found her name, Lily Reynolds. For years, that number had been a reminder of everything he'd lost. Now, it was his only chance to make things right. He pressed call. It rang once, twice. Then a voice answered, soft and trembling. "Ethan." He closed his eyes. "Hey, Lil. It's me." There was a pause, the kind that carries years of silence. Then she exhaled shakily. "I didn't think you'd ever call." "Yeah, me neither," he said. "But I think I should have a long time ago." Her voice broke. "I miss her, Ethan." "Me too," he whispered. "Every day." They spoke for nearly an hour. No shouting. No blame. Just two broken siblings remembering the woman who taught them what love looked like. Before hanging up, Lily said something that stayed with him. "Dad's not doing great, Ethan. He doesn't say it, but he misses you. We both do." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling of his small apartment, the city lights flickering through the blinds. For the first time in years, he didn't feel angry. He just felt ready. The next morning, he packed a small bag and drove 6 hours back to his hometown. The homecoming. The Reynolds house stood at the end of a quiet street lined with old oak trees. The white paint was peeling, the porch light flickered weakly, and the same wind chime his mother had hung a decade ago still swayed in the breeze. Ethan parked across the street and sat there for a moment, staring at the front door. Every part of him wanted to turn around and leave. But something stronger, quieter, older, told him to stay. He finally stepped out, walked up the porch steps, and knocked. The door creaked open. Lily stood there, older, thinner, but still his sister. Her eyes widened, disbelief flashing across her face before softening into something else. "Ethan," she whispered. "Hey," he said quietly. For a long moment, they just stood there, two people connected by blood, separated by pride. Then she stepped forward and hugged him. It was shaky, unsure, but real. "Dad's inside," she said finally, pulling back. "He doesn't know you're here." Ethan nodded, his stomach twisting. He stepped inside, the smell of coffee and old furniture washing over him. The house hadn't changed. Photos on the walls, his mother's favorite quilt on the couch, a vase of fresh flowers on the table. Lily must have kept that tradition alive. In the living room, Robert Reynolds sat in his armchair, reading the paper. His hair was grayer, his shoulders heavier. When he looked up, his eyes widened. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Robert stood slowly. "Ethan," he said, his voice low. "Hi, Dad," Ethan replied, his throat tight. They just stared at each other. Two men who'd spent years pretending they were strangers. Finally, Robert spoke again. "You look tired." Ethan laughed softly. "You look older." Robert's lips twitched, almost smiling. That's what happens when your kids stop calling. The air between them was thick, full of words unsaid. But for the first time, neither of them looked away. "I'm sorry," Ethan said finally. "For everything. For not being here. For saying things I didn't mean. For running." Robert exhaled slowly, his voice trembling. "You think I didn't want to run too? I lost your mother, Ethan. Then I lost you." Ethan blinked back tears. "I thought you blamed me." "I blamed myself," his father whispered, "for not holding this family together." That broke something inside Ethan. All the walls, the guilt, the silence, it cracked wide open. He stepped forward and hugged his father. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the clock ticking softly in the corner. When they finally pulled apart, Robert smiled faintly. "Your mother would have loved to see this." "I think she does," Ethan said quietly. Healing the past. Over the next few days, the house began to feel alive again. Lily cooked breakfast in the mornings, Robert told stories they hadn't heard in years, and Ethan helped fix the broken fence in the backyard. They laughed again, small, cautious laughs at first, then louder ones that felt like sunshine breaking through clouds. One afternoon, Ethan went up to the attic. Dust floated through the air like tiny stars. In a box marked Mom's Things, he found her journal. He sat cross-legged on the floor and began to read.